Treatise of Avicenna. I divide this book into 8 chapters or parts. In the first chapter one will speak of Mercury and its nature, and also of the sulfur contained within it. In the second I will speak of the nature of perfect bodies, and their sulfur. In the third I will speak of the conjunction of body and spirit and the dissolution of the stone into the first matter. In the fourth I will speak of the extraction of water from the earth. In the fifth I will speak of the foundation or also fusion over its own earth. In the sixth I will speak of the method of sublimation of the earth. In the seventh I will speak of the multiplication and fixation of the stone. In the eighth and last chapter one will speak of the method of projecting the medicine and tinting any metal into gold and silver. Chapter 1. Quicksilver is cold and moist, and God created all minerals from it, and it is aerial and fugitive of fire. But when it has stood in fire a little, it smells bad, it does wondrous works alien to itself. And it is only the living spirit, and in the world, there is none such as it is, that can work such things as those performed through it. And it enters every body, penetrates, lifts, and exceeds. It is the ferment of the bodies with which it is mixed, and then the whole will be elixir for whiteness and redness. It is the perennial water, the water of life and the milk of the virgin, a sun and alum by drinking which one does not die. When it is alive it has certain effects, when dead it has others, and when dissolved it has the greatest effects. It is a lustful serpent impregnating itself, giving birth in one day, killing all with its poison, fleeing from fire. But the wise make it behold the fire, and then it works and changes, because just as it is changed it changes, and just as it is dyed it dyes, and just as it coagulates, therefore among all minerals quicksilver is to be preferred in generation. For it is found in all minerals, and it has a symbol with all. It is of earthly and moderate nature, and watery or living oil, very subtle moderately, and very subtle spirit, from earthly water, having weight and downward motion, brightness, fluidity, and silver color. For it comes out of the earth and returns into the earth, defending itself by nodding, and continues again in moisture from heat, and with the spirit extinguished it is fixed, and is mixed with all minerals, and whoever possesses it will firmly adhere, whence it is called the mother of minerals. But quicksilver apparently has a dense substance, like a unicorn because of the heaviness of its immense weight, since gold prevails while it is in its nature. And it is the strongest of composition and uniform nature, because it is not separated from itself, nor does it allow itself to be divided into parts in any way. Because it either departs with all its substance from fire, or it remains in it in fire. In it necessarily is the cause of perfection, because it alone suffices to the manner of perfection in every degree, namely with ignition, due to its good adherence and strength of its mixture. But when its parts are thickened by fire, it no longer allows itself to be corrupted, nor through the entry of fierce flame does it allow itself to be raised further, because it does not allow rarefaction of itself because of its density and lack of burning, which is made by the rarity of sulfur which it does not have. But quicksilver in its works is clearly and perfectly saved from burning, and effective in fusion when fixed. Indeed, it is the tincture of redness, of the most abundant nourishment, of shining brightness, and it does not leave the mixture as long as it exists. For it is friendly and pleasing to metal, and a medium by which tinctures are joined, since it mixes with them in the smallest parts and naturally adheres to them at the bottom, because it is of their nature. However, when it is mixed with the moon, silver, it does so more easily, because by its nature it has participation in it. Yet no metal is submerged in it except the sun, gold. And thus you have the greatest secret, because Mercury receives into itself what is of its own nature, but rejects what is foreign, since its nature rejoices more with its own nature than with what is foreign. From this it is clear that those things which contain more mercury are of greater perfection, and those which contain less, since it holds a symbol in nature with minerals. And God gave it substance and the property of substance, which in no other natural things is possible to possess, since it alone is that which overcomes fire, and is not overcome by it, but resting pleasantly rejoices in it. It alone, being metallic, contains all that we need for our art. Therefore it is clear that quicksilver contains within itself its good sulfur, by which gold and silver are coagulated, according to the different mode of digestion. On the nature of perfect bodies, that is of the sun and the moon and their sulfur. Chapter 2. Gold is the most perfect body, lord of stones, king and head of all others, which neither earth corrupts, nor burning things burn, nor is diminished in fire but is improved in it, because it is moistened by a certain humidity, and not even water alters it. Its constitution is tempered and its nature balanced in heat, cold, moisture, and dryness, and nothing superfluous or deficient is found in it. It is created from the most subtle and clear substance of quicksilver, and from a small amount of pure and clean sulfur, fixed redness, clearly tincturing the very substance of quicksilver. Gold is held to be the body and ferment of the white and red elixirs, neither is improved, perfected, or completed without it, and by no other, just as dough is fermented by no other than its own ferment. Gold is a lasting body, remaining through the ages. Therefore, philosophers have preferred and magnified it, saying that gold behaves in bodies just as the sun and the stars. For the sun in its light and brightness germinates all vegetation and perfects all fruits. Therefore Hermes says, true tincture is never made without the red stone. Gold holds the first degree of nobility among all bodies, because it is most tempered due to the mixture and purification of sulfur and mercury, and it has much of the virtue of sulfur and little of its substance, and conversely much of the substance of mercury and little of its virtue. Because of this, in respect to mercury, it is heavy, and in respect to the virtue of sulfur, it is very red. And because of the very strong compaction of sulfur and mercury in its lime, it is not so moist to the touch or oily like other bodies, therefore it does not leave black streaks like other metals when drawn over parchment. But if silver or another metal is mixed with it, then it will make black streaks, because the oiliness of the mixed body tends to the surface and makes it whiten and moisten, and because the parts penetrate deeply to the center, it is heavier more than because of its quicksilver. Lead, however, is heavier more because of its quicksilver than because of the consolidation of its parts weakly adhering to each other, and therefore it is the least sonorous among all bodies. Gold, however, because of the strong and tenacious cohesion of its parts, is among all the most acute of sound. Gold also is not burned by fire proportional to itself. For the strongest fire consumes all under the lunar globe. It is also not burned by those things which burn other bodies, such as sulfur or arsenic. And craftsmen are accustomed to purify it to the highest brightness by using bricks and salt. Silver has much of the substance of sulfur and little of its virtue, and little of the substance of mercury and much of its virtue, therefore it is white, because color follows the multitude of virtue, and virtue is located in vapor. Its matter is nearer the matter of gold than any other metal, therefore it easily turns into gold. It needs no other labor except to change color and add weight. Argent Vives litharge is the best of all things for white tincture because its matter is near. Silver is a perfect body, though less so than gold, and is lighter in weight than gold, and belongs to the parts of the moon. It corrupts in a moist place, and its taste is acidic, it is diminished in fire and burned by sulfurs. The inner parts of gold become the outer parts of silver, and its nature is cold and dry, and it receives tincture. Moreover, gold is a perfect and masculine body, without excess or diminution. If it were perfected only by liquefaction in the earth, it would be a red elixir mixed in its nature. Silver, however, is a perfect feminine body. If it were perfected by perfect fusion, it would be a tincture for white or an elixir, which it is not, because they are only reduced in nature to perfect bodies. And if these perfect bodies were mixed with imperfect bodies, the imperfect would not thereby become perfect, rather their perfection would be diminished by the imperfect. But if it is made more than perfect, twice, 4 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times, then the imperfect is perfected along with them, because nature simply always operates and perfection in them is simple and inseparable, unless perhaps it is driven into flight with the volatile, since the sum of the volatile exceeds the sum of the fixed body. And since a perfect body from very pure quicksilver and from such red sulfur can be had for the red elixir, and similarly silver for the white elixir, therefore we choose these for our elixir, for our matter, because these two bodies are simply perfect, digested, and cooked by natural quality, strongly without any artful purification. Therefore, we can work with our artificial fire on them. And although nature perfects something, nevertheless it only simply operates on what it has. There is in bodies a double sulfur, one is from the substance of quicksilver, worn in them at the beginning of their mixture, which we call the supereminent. The other is an external sulfur foreign to nature, which we call the corresponding. And it must be noted very diligently that the conjunction of these two bodies is necessary in this art for white and red. And there are two reasons, one of which is, since gold is the most noble among metals and more compact, perfect, and fixed, nevertheless if it dissolves and is separated into smallest parts, it becomes spiritual and flying, like mercury, because of its heat, and then it has an infinite tincture, and this tincture is called the warm masculine sperm. If silver is dissolved in warm water, it nevertheless remains fixed as before, and has little or no tincture, but it is ready to receive the tincture itself in the temperament of hot and cold, dry, therefore their conjunction is suitable. There is also another reason, because although gold and silver are each difficult to fuse and liquefy by themselves, if joined they flow and liquefy more easily, as goldsmiths know, making consolidations of gold. Wherefore, if in our stone there were only one of these two, never would any art flow easily from the medicine, nor give tincture. And if it gave tincture, it would only tint according to the quantity, because it would not be a receptacle of tincture. Do not understand all this of the common moon, but of the philosophical sun and moon, one is called lunar and the other solar. Therefore I advise that you work only with Mercury, sun, and moon, because all the benefit of this art consists in these three. Of the conjunction of body and spirit, and the dissolution of the stone into the first matter. Chapter 3. It is certain that everything is from that into which it is dissolved. For ice is converted into water by heat. Therefore, it is clear that water existed before ice. But all metals are generated from mercury, therefore they dissolve back into it. The first rule of the stone is to dissolve it like coarse quicksilver, so that it is reduced to its first matter. This is all done through quicksilver, because it has the power to reduce the sun and moon to their nature and first matter. But since quicksilver contains sediment and adulteration without flame, and the substance of moisture, it is necessary to remove its excess and supply what is lacking, lest in projection the liquid create color, and likewise to remove its moisture, lest it cause the entire matter to flee in projection. From its property is the power to preserve the substance of the medicine, not to burn but to fix, and to defend from burning. Therefore from it is born Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, iron, etc., which necessarily arise from impurity. It is to be noted that there are two kinds of first matter. One is proximate, the other remote. The proximate matter is quicksilver, the remote is water, because quicksilver was first water, and later quicksilver. The true beginning of our work is the dissolution of the stone, because dissolved bodies are reduced to the nature of spirit, being more fixed. For the dissolution of the body is with the coagulation of the spirit. Therefore, be patient, boil, grind, and burn, and do not be weary to repeat this many times. Because as it imbibes, it softens by water. The more you grind, the more you soften, and the coarse parts become subtle until sufficient. And these parts are divided, when they are mixed with spirit, and all that is mixed is wholly dissolved. And the mixing is done with great rubbing, roasting, and fire, long endure the tide and viscous parts which are in bodies. But bodies dissolved and reduced to the nature of spirit are never separated, just as water mixed with water is not separated. For nature rejoices when bridegroom and bride are joined. Because the intention of our work is nothing else but that the purest substance of mercury be chosen from impure bodies, since the elixir consists only of these. The first mode of dissolution and nature is putrefaction. Yet there are many species of putrefaction and corruption. The first natural principle, therefore, is material sensitive matter, as I have said above. According to heat moving the matter itself to putrefaction. The signs of putrefaction are a black color, a foul odor, and the matter in touch is subtle and discontinuous, as if it were the first mercury. Because heat acting in moisture first generates blackness, which is the blackness of the raven, this is the chief of the work. Also note that ingress, submersion, connection, conjunction, complexing, composition, and mixing all mean the same in this art. Nothing is submerged, joined, or connected without also being mixed. For mixing is the commingling of things through the smallest parts, that is, through indivisibles joined by union. Also know firmly that the entire strength of this mastery is only in putrefaction. For if it is not putrid, it cannot be dissolved or melted, and if it is not dissolved, it becomes nothing. Also know that in every work there are three dimensions, width, height, and depth, and this is clearly seen in the body, which is subject to our force. For example, our stone in its first creation is white and so it appears in the face, therefore we say it is cold and moist, because it is so. Hence we conclude that our stone is watery because it is cold and moist. The natural disposition is called the manifest body or height, but width is the middle disposition, through which it extends to the deep disposition. But the middle is between depth and height, as between contents or opposites. Transition through these is impossible unless one quality is destroyed, because cold and moist is the high disposition. Therefore, another quality must be destroyed, namely moisture by putrefaction, then it thickens, and its moisture is converted into dryness, and thus the transition is made from high to middle disposition, which is coldness and dryness, called width, because it holds cold and moisture by coldness, dry and heat by dryness, thus middle. Afterward, through the existing heat, the coldness remaining in the body is changed into heat, which is contrary to deep disposition, because heat is the hidden part of the body, as Aristotle shows best, etc. On extracting water from earth. Chapter 4. After the matter has been putrefied to make body and spirit, which, however, cannot be done except in air, that is, through sublimation. Know then that our stone is divided into two principal parts, namely the upper part which ascends, and the lower part which remains fixed at the bottom. Yet these two parts agree in virtue. Therefore the philosopher says, that which is below is like that which is above. This division is necessary to accomplish the miracles of the stone. The lower part is earth, called the nurse and ferment, and the upper part is the soul, which vivifies the whole stone and causes it to revive. Hence, after the celebrated separation, through the conjunction of the stone many miracles are performed. It is to be noted that although for some our stone is not divided into four parts, namely into the four elements in the first operation, as said above, it is divided into four principal parts, namely one which ascends above, not fixed, another which remains below, called fixed, and earth or ferment, which nourishes and ferments the whole stone, as said. Of the unfixed part, one must have a good quantity and give sharpness to the stone, which is the purest, entirely without filth, until the whole stone by the virtue of the unfixed spirit is separated by sublimation. And this is what the philosopher says, it ascends from earth to heaven. Later, the stone thus exalted must be returned onto marble, with the element extracted from the stone itself in the first operation. That element is called the water of the stone. And it must be roasted so often that the stone, by its subtlety, does not descend back into the earth, that is, it receives the superior force by sublimating and the inferior by descending, so that it becomes spiritual by sublimation, and when spiritual, becomes corporeal again by descending. Thus you have the glory and brightness of this world, and all darkness, poverty, and sickness flee from you, because thus composed, it cures every illness. And this stone is of all strength, because there is no comparison of this stone to other strengths. For it visibly conquers everything solid, piercing, penetrating, and converting by subduing. The philosophers said, that water alone by itself does everything, dissolves everything, congeals everything, breaks down everything without any assistance. In it are usually seen beautiful colors. The transformation of a body into water is the tincture of any body. Moreover, there is a difference between the tincture of water and the tincture of oil. For the tincture of water washes and cleanses, and the tincture of oil dyes and colors. On the foundation or fusion upon its earth. Chapter 5. Therefore, pour the water upon its own earth, and mix by grinding immediately, gradually imbibing, boiling weakly, and then gently calcining, until the earth drinks a fifth part of its own water. Know that the earth must be nourished, first with a little of its water, and then with more, just as is seen in the upbringing of a child. Therefore, grind the earth many times, and gradually imbibe it every 8 days, cook it, and then moderately calcine it in fire. Do not grow weary of repeating this work many times, because the earth does not bear fruit without frequent irrigation. Therefore, when it becomes dry, being very thirsty, it drinks its own moisture and watery part. And grinding is not good until the earth and the water become one and the same body. Therefore, do not withdraw your hand from grinding and roasting, until the earth is dry and white, which whiteness is generated from such frequent and dry grinding and application. But take care not to imbibe the earth except gradually, and with long trituration after the drying of the earth. Hence, in this the measure must everywhere be noted, lest either excessive dryness or superfluous moisture ruin the work. And cook and roast to the extent that the dissolution demands imbibing. Note, every time after the calcination of the earth, pour temperate water of the earth over it, namely not too much nor too little. For if too much, it becomes a sea of confusion; if too little, it will be burned into ash. Therefore, gently and not hastily, every 8 days, irrigate the earth, boil, and calcine it until it has drunk its own water. Therefore, continue the work many times, because unless over a long time, you will not see the tincture, nor will you bring it perfectly to completion until the work is perfect. Therefore, when you are at work, make sure to recall to mind all the signs which appear in each decoction, and investigate their causes. There are indeed 3 principal colors: black, white, and yellow. Therefore, when the black emerges, it is perfect but not yet complete. Therefore, every time, strengthen the fire in calcination, until the earth comes out white from the strength of the fire. For just as heat acting on the moist generates blackness, so acting on the dry generates whiteness. Therefore, when the earth is not yet white, grind it with its water, and calcine it again, because azoth and fire cleanse the earth and utterly strip it of its darkness. For the preparation is always with water, and as the suitability of the water is, so will be the clearness of the earth. And the more it is washed, the whiter the earth will be. Hence, a certain philosopher said, when you find the black itself, know this is the beginning of the work. But after putrefaction it becomes red, not a true redness, and also yellows, of which a certain philosopher said, it often becomes red, and often yellow, often melts and often also coagulates before the true whiteness. Hence another says, it dissolves itself, coagulates itself, adorns itself with redness. Before whiteness, it also becomes green. Also, before whiteness appears the color of the peacock. Hence someone says thus, know that all the colors of the world which can be imagined appear before whiteness, and then true whiteness follows. One says, its usefulness is to be awaited. Therefore, let it be decocted so long until it appears pure like the shining of the eyes of fishes, and then you will know that our stone is rightly coagulated. Another philosopher says, when you find whiteness prevailing over all, rest assured that in that whiteness red is hidden, and then it is not necessary to extract it, but rather to cook it until it becomes totally red. But between the true redness and the true whiteness is the yellow of grayish color, of which it is said thus, by the increase of the fire's heat, one comes to the yellow. And another, do not despise the ash, because God will give it liquefaction, and then at last the king will be crowned with a red diadem by divine command. You must therefore attempt this magistery. For the composition will not be without marriage and putrefaction. And marriage is to mix the subtle with the thick, and to putrefy, grind and roast, irrigate until they are mixed together, so that they become one, and there is no diversity, like water mixed with water. Then the thick will try to retain the subtle, and the soul will try to struggle with the fire and endure it, and the spirit will try to be submerged and to be blended with the bodies. Know, however, that when you have mixed the body with the moisture, and heat of the fire comes to it, the moisture turns upon the body and dissolves it, and then the spirit cannot escape from it, because it is imbibed in the fire. And spirits are otherwise fugitive, until they are mixed with the body. Then they try to resist the fire and its flame. Nevertheless, these parts do not come together except with good tempering, persistence, and long labor. The ancient philosophers gave our stone many names, such as amalgam, vitriol, blood because of the red color, and countless other names. They called it iron because of its unmelting nature. For when this body is deprived of moisture, the dry body cannot flow, which before flowed because of its moisture and was volatile. For necessarily bodies are fixed by the privation of moisture, which is called calcination by the philosophers, and the putrefaction or pulverization of the matter removes the consolidated parts from moisture. And by calcination the spirits are already fixed, and the soft becomes hard, and the volatile becomes fixed, and thus it is changed from one nature into another. The Taba says, "Let there be a change of complexions, namely from cold and moist into hot and dry, or from phlegmatic to choleric according to the physicians. By the heat of the sun and gentle decoction, the spirits are coagulated. But by intense and excessive heat, the work is destroyed," as Bonellus says. For if you kindle a strong fire before the increase of the red, it happens that nothing is gained for us. For all philosophers, and the true ones, assert that the fire must be gentle, and they testify for the reasons stated above. For they say that we must gently govern the fire so that our sulfur becomes combustible. Hence regarding seeds ought not to be harvested until the time of reaping has come. The philosophers called this our stone the salamander, because just as the salamander is nourished and lives only in fire, that is perfected, so also our stone. On the method of sublimating the earth. Chapter 6. A certain great philosopher said, "In the dregs is that which you seek. Therefore, let the dregs be taken when they are drawn out of the alembic, and let them be thoroughly ground, and imbibed with their own water, and dried in a gentle fire or in the sun, and this should be done many times. For by such preparation, that smoke becomes suitable for sublimation." Whence Geber says, "Through multiple repetitions of imbibition and roasting, the greater part of its aqueous nature is eliminated, and the residue by sublimation. Let the aforementioned dregs therefore be taken and prepared for sublimation, administering to them at first a gentle fire, then proportionally greater, until that clean and white smoke rises. And if it does not happen the first time, repeat the imbibition on the same dregs until it does, and finally, when it no longer adheres to the dregs, then a fixed part results from them. And according to its different operations, a diversity of medicines is created, sometimes Saturn, or Jupiter, etc. No one, however, should sublimate the earth for sophistic, i.e., false, works, but only for our elixir. And do not mix that which remains below with that which rises above, but keep each part separate, because that which remains at the bottom you must grind again with fresh mercury and repeat the sublimation by the method described, until all of it has been sublimated. And take heed, you should never proceed to fusion in the way described, that is, to the philosopher's stone, unless you first sublimate it. For there is no union of body and spirit except through sublimation. First the material must be sublimated and fixed, and after a suitable union has occurred, fixation follows. Do not make fixed material volatile, but take one part of the fixed material and 2 parts of prepared mercury and incorporate them well together. Then sublimate, collect the sublimated part, and always grind that which remains at the bottom again with new mercury, following the method until all is sublimated. For according to the philosopher, the power of white sulfur that does not burn congeals mercury. And this is the best thing in our magistery, through which the elixir for silver is made. And if the sulfur is the best kind, clear with a red hue, and has within it the power of non-burning argentiferous sulfur, then it is the matter from which the elixir for gold is made. And as the philosophers teach, let sulfur for silver, white, be made first, and afterwards the red for gold. For gold is not made unless silver existed first. Truly, nothing can go from the first to the third without passing through the second, because there is no transition from one extreme to another except through the middle. Therefore, perfect citrinity cannot be made from blackness unless whiteness comes first, because citrinity is composed of a small amount of redness and purest whiteness. Nor can whiteness be made from citrinity unless blackness existed first. In the same way, gold cannot become silver unless it is first corrupted and blackened. For something better cannot become worse except by its corruption, because the corruption of one thing is the generation of another. Therefore, whoever wishes to convert gold into silver must proceed through corruption, and likewise silver into gold. For their sulfur, being non-burning, can become red sulfur by greater digestion with fire. Citronation, in fact, is nothing other than complete digestion. Blackness is nothing other than purification. For heat acting upon moisture first brings about blackness. Heat acting on dryness causes whiteness, and also in whiteness it causes citrinity and deep redness. For white and red sulfur are made from one and the same metallic matter, fully purified, though cooked and digested by different methods. Therefore, in quicksilver is white sulfur, just as in gold is red sulfur. And absolutely there is no such sulfur upon the earth, neither white nor red, except what exists in these bodies. And therefore the bodies must be carefully prepared, so that from them we may obtain their sulfur and their quicksilver, from which gold and silver were made under the earth. For if I did not see gold and silver, I would say without doubt that alchemy is not true. These are the shining bodies in which there are tinging rays, which tinge other bodies into whiteness and redness according to how they are prepared. The alembic and the cucurbit must be joined, so that mercury cannot escape, for it is not sublimated except by the power of air. And if it finds an open place, it flies off in smoke, and the magistery is lost. For the whole aim of the work is nothing other than to obtain the stone known in the chapter. Know that this is the stone known to the philosophers, which has virtues greater than all the virtues of stones, which you should place in the philosophical vessel for sublimation, and with it let the stone be sublimated, until in the final sublimation it is purified. And this is the first order, which is called the first operation, by which the purest and most subtle substance is drawn forth. Second is the solution, so that the matter is dissolved into water. Third is putrefaction, because Morinus says, "Nothing has ever been animated or brought to birth, nor anything that grows, except through putrefaction and change." Thus, putrefaction must occur, because the corruption of one thing is the generation of another. Fourth is ablution, for the putrefied and dirty thing must be washed and cleansed from corrupting impurity. And they spoke well, because as long as the water remains over the earth, and it is washed and formed, thus ablution and ceration are the same. Fifth is coagulation, for the water must be gently cooked in our sun, changed into earth, perfectly cooked and dried, and turned into powder. Sixth is calcination. Know that the calcined thing is more suitable than the uncalcined, and it is simply fixation. Hence there were many philosophers who called calcination fixation, and they spoke rightly, because all such things are in sublimation. Surely, if anyone perfectly sublimates, he completes the whole work. And know that all this is completed in one furnace and one vessel. And any intelligent person can complete these 7 dispositions. Therefore, do not be negligent in sublimation. For as the purification is, so too will be the perfection. Now I wish to tell you what sublimation is. Sublimation is the elevation of the most subtle parts from the fixed parts. The unfixed parts are raised through smoke, that is, through air, because, as we have said, it must be guarded lest they flee. Indeed, they are fixed with the fixed parts and remain, and yield a faster fusion. Understand that true sublimation is when we make a separation of the parts which rise above from those which remain below. Indeed, we wish them to unite together properly, because in our stone, before we find the first purification, which is completed through solution, we find nothing diminished or excessive. For this reason Geber said, "With it let the stone be sublimated until at last it comes into the purity of sublimation." He said, "With it," that is, without any other addition or foreign matter. Because of this, all who labor and are deceived, who sublimate with feces and do not know what they are doing, or what the philosophical stone is, profit nothing, because they are ignorant of philosophical sublimation. Geber says, "The stone of the philosophers is one medicine in which the entire magistery consists. To it nothing foreign is added, nor is anything taken away, except what is superfluous in the operation, and this is the first purification which is completed through sublimation. I have now sufficiently demonstrated, when you wish to perform our sublimation, that you should neither add nor take away anything from our stone, but place the entire substance into the sealed vessel, as we said in the first disposition, sealing it firmly. Place it in the furnace and arrange with ashes below and underneath, so that 2 parts of the vessel remain uncovered, until the material is dissolved. Afterwards, apply gentle fire until the greater part is turned into powder, which will be in 30 days. And when the operations we mentioned have been done, sublimation, solution, distillation, descent, putrefaction, ablution, ceration, coagulation, or fixation, know that the philosophers have assigned many such and various names to operations and labors, which in truth are nothing but one and the same, and in one single operation, all these are done together and at once, and at the same time and with the same labor. And they did this so that the knowledge would remain obscure to the unworthy. Likewise, the philosopher says, for truly, the earth, when it is imbibed with water and ground, and dried through the temperate heat of our sun, the whole matter is turned into earth, which at least he who knows how to do our operation perfectly understands. Hence Hermes, father of the philosophers, said, its power is entire if it be turned into earth, that is, if the water be turned into earth. On the multiplication and fixation of the stone. Chapter 7. What follows is concerning the union of the powder, so that it may bear fruit, and their fruit may remain forever. And I will teach how to fix the sublimated powders, so that they can remain in the fire, and be united and mixed with bodies. Fixation is the fixing of a fugitive thing, making it suitable to endure fire. The reason for its discovery is so that all tincture and all alteration may be prepared and converted into another nature. It is fixed thus: take that which has been sublimated, and divide it into cucurbits or urinals, according as the quantity of matter requires. The sign of its fixation is when the matter no longer ascends into the alembic. Or you may strengthen the fire excellently, and then it will immediately be apparent. Or place some of the substance on an iron plate, if it remains fixed, do not repeat the process. Then take the said urinals equally and place them upon a reverberation furnace, and first apply a gentle cinerous heat for several days, until you see that with such fire, no more ascends. Then gently strengthen the fire, continuing until the matter is fixed. And it must be known that spirit and soul are not truly united except by heat, because then all colors that can be conceived in the world appear, and then the work is stabilized and completed in one color, namely whiteness, and in it all colors unite. For whitening is the beginning of the work and the foundation of the whole body. Nor is it afterward varied into different colors except into red, which is the ultimate end. Citronation, however, which occurs between white and red, is not called a perfect color. But in the decoction, after the whitening, you cannot go wrong. For the regulation of fire is gradually increased, after whiteness comes citrinity, and then redness, as I have said. And know that Mercury is fire, it burns bodies, kills, and constrains with a single regime. And the more the bodies are ground and mixed, the more they are prepared and thinned. Another philosopher says, an excessive burning fire causes the moisture to evaporate, but a cold fire destroys the work. Note, the regime of fire should be governed according to nature and the example of the 4 seasons. In the first season, namely winter, the earth conceives. In the second, spring, it produces herbs and flowers. In the third, summer, the fruit matures. In the fourth, autumn, the fruits are gathered. Thus in our work, by similarity, in the first operation Mercury is mortified, and the whole work is turned into powder, and the earth conceives, so that it may be converted into another nature. Hence in that decoction, it becomes black. In the second nature, by whitening itself. In the third, the fruits now appear, because then redness appears, which is at the end of the work. In the fourth, the fruits mature and are gathered from them. These things on fixation shall suffice. On the manner of casting the medicine and tinging any metal into gold or silver. Chapter 8. I have completed the promised end up to this point, the great magistery, for the making of the most excellent white and red elixir. Here, Finally, I will speak of the manner of projection, which is the completion of the work and the desired and awaited joy. The white elixir whitens ad infinitum, and brings whatever metal to perfect whiteness. But it must be known that one metal is more easily brought to the elixir than another, the nearer is perfected more easily than the remote. And when we find a perfect metal, and one very near to perfection, the fault of imperfection is excused in it more than in one far removed. Which metals are more remote or nearer is made clear enough in many books. And since the white or red elixir becomes very spiritual, yet it operates beyond nature, it is not a wonder that it is comminglable with the body onto which it is projected, it only needs to melt it. It is even weighty enough that a projection over 1,000,000 parts can immediately penetrate. Therefore, I will hand over to you one great secret: one part must be commingled with 1,000 parts of the nearest body, and all this should be sealed in one vessel firmly and properly, and it must be placed in the furnace of fusion for 3 days, until the whole has been inseparably joined together. And that is the work of 3 days. Then, one part of that united body is to be projected upon 1,000 parts of any body, the nearer metals always being better, and that is the work of 1 day, or hour, or minute. There is also another manner of projection. Take 100 parts of mercury washed with salt and vinegar, and place in a crucible over fire. When it begins to fume, cast one part of the medicine over those 100 parts of mercury, and the whole becomes medicine. Then place one part of that medicine over another 100 parts of mercury, over strong fire, and it is again medicine, and so on in succession. In the last projection, one part of the finally coagulated medicine transmutes 100 parts of mercury into true gold or silver, according to how the elixir was prepared. Another manner of projection: place one part of the said medicine over 60 parts of washed mercury, and place it in a glass vessel, and seal the vessel very well so that it does not breathe. Then place it among warm ashes for 3 days. And if your medicine retains the mercury, know your medicine is perfect. Then all those 60 parts are medicine, just as the first. And by this method you may prove the excellence of the elixir, which is always to be multiplied in this way. Sometimes one part of the medicine converts 50, or 100, or 200, or even 1,000, or even up to infinity parts. And always all that is medicine which is retained from the mercury and is perfectly coagulated. Now the manner of the work is this: cast one part of the said medicine upon 100 parts of molten gold, and it makes it brittle, and the whole becomes medicine, of which one part projected over 100 parts of any molten metal converts it into the best gold. And if you project the elixir upon the moon, in like manner it converts all bodies into Luna. By the same method, you can convert Sol into Luna, into Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. But if the said medicine or elixir does not have ingress, take of the stone extracted in the first operation, and of the aforementioned mercury, in equal parts, and mix and incorporate them together by grinding in the stone. Then, by distilling in a bath, so that it may better be joined, afterwards dry it. And if you wish, you may draw off the water by alembic, and repeat this process, imbibing, incorporating, drying, until the aforementioned medicine is incorporated with the said prepared mercury. When this is done, place the whole in a urinal, glass vessel, having a rounded bottom, and beneath it place the reverberatory heater. You will apply the heat of a candle and ashes, by their degrees, as shown above. And when it seems right to you, gradually add the said mercury, until the aforementioned matter is fixed, and becomes more fusible than wax. And thus you will have the elixir or the true stone of the philosophers complete, which converts mercury and every imperfect body into Sol and Luna, better than which none can be had. Epilogue of the whole work. I say, therefore, the sum of the entire work is nothing other than this, that the stone, known in the chapters of the books, be taken, and that with diligence the work of sublimation of the first degree be labored over, so that it be cleansed from corrupting impurity. Then, when it is dissolved, whitened or reddened with its subtle addition, until in the final stage of sublimation it becomes volatile. Yet again, let it be fixed through the methods of fixation, until all comes to rest in the harshness of fire. Then, take the fixed part and with the unfixed part preserved, through the method of solution and sublimation, make it volatile, and the volatile fixed, and the fixed dissolved, and again volatile, and the volatile fixed, until it flows and transforms into a perfect solar and lunar completion. And in this way the most precious arcanum operates, above every worldly precious thing, the incomparable treasure of all the philosophers. The end.